Hi there. Today I'm going to talk through three simple three-card tarot spreads. Now, learning how to read tarot cards in a spread is very important for learning to read tarot cards. Everyone starts out, myself included, with learning the meanings of the cards. I know that I've spent hours going through websites and books trying to memorize the cards. I've spent a long time laying all of my cards out on the floor and trying to look for similarities between different numbers and different stories that were being told. And all that is a very important step. It is important to know what the cards mean and what they mean to you, but it can turn into just memorizing lists of keywords, and that's not what tarot is really about. Tarot is about telling a story with the cards and answering questions with the cards and trying to connect with their deeper meaning. And that's something that can really only be done with reading them as they're meant to be read and in doing spreads. Now, you can do any level of complexity with spreads. You can do a 10-card Celtic cross every time you read if you want to, but that can get a little bit intimidating. You can also even do a one-card spread. For example, I like to draw a card in the morning and I'll do a card of the day. And throughout the day, I'll try to reflect on how that card applies to me and what it may be trying to tell me. But if you want to get into a little bit more complexity and a little bit more depth with trying to answer questions and trying to tell that story, then three-card spreads are a really good place to start. So today I'm going to be using my Rider Tarot deck to go through three different tarot card spreads. I'll start off by explaining what the spread is, what the cards mean in each position, and some example questions that you can use. And then I'll go and I'll actually do an example reading with a question of my own, doing a reading for myself. And I'll talk through my interpretation of the spread based on the position of each card. So at the end, you should have a pretty good idea of what the spread is, what the cards mean in each position, and the types of questions that are good for that kind of spread. All right, let's read some tarot cards. Now, the first spread that I'm going to talk about is very versatile. This is called the Past, Present, and Future spread. And the reason for that is because you have three cards laid out in a row. And on the left, you have the past. In the middle, you have the present. And on the right, you have the future. And this is a really good spread for a large variety of questions. It can give you insight into where you're at, and that insight is based on where you're coming from, where you've handled how you've handled situations in the past, and it's also going to tell you where you're headed, where your path is going if you don't change things, or maybe where you're going if you do change things for the better. So it's a very versatile spread. It's very good for beginners because it's clearly delineated what each card means with the past, the present, and the future. And there's a lot of information just in those positions that you can pull on. So for myself today, I am currently thinking about buying a house, and that's something that comes with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of trepidation, because it is a huge decision and a huge purchase. So I'm going to ask the tarot to give me a little bit insight on how I can figure out if this is a good time to buy a house. And that's a good question for this spread because there's a lot of timeliness and history packed into that question. I need to know where I'm coming from to know if I'm ready in the present to do this, and I need an idea of where I'm going to know if the outcome is going to be what I want. So let's go ahead and dive into that reading. So we're dealing out three cards, and we have the past, the present, and the future. And while we're shuffling these cards, we're really thinking about our intent, and we're thinking about our question of, what do I need to know about buying a house? What do I need to know about the best time to buy a house? So looking at the past, we have the Queen of Pentacles. Now, the Queen of Pentacles is a very nurturing card. She's really about manifestation and growing things. She's a queen, so she's very outwardly influenced of tending to the feelings and caring for others. but she's also the Queen of Pentacles. So with the Pentacle there, we know that she's about physical goods, physical manifestation of things in the world. So career, possessions, things like a house. So in the past, I've been very focused on nurturing those goals and tending to the cares of others while also tending to what I myself need. So I would see that as laying a strong foundation for being in the place where I'm at, where I'm able to consider buying a house. In the present, we have the Nine of Wands. Now, the Nine of Wands, he's very beaten down. He's tired. He's towards the end of his journey, and you can see that he's wounded. He's leaning heavily on his staff, but he's still going. He hasn't given up. He hasn't quit. And this, I feel, is telling me that I should keep pursuing my dream, even though it may seem hard. I may have insecurities. I may be unsure. But it's important to keep going and to realize that just because you're wounded or just because you're uncertain and the way doesn't seem clear, doesn't mean that this is the end. Now in the future, we have the King of Cups. The King of Cups is a very interesting card to me because Cups, he's very emotional. He's very centered on his feelings and his passions and his emotions. But he's a king, and you can tell he's sitting on this throne, this solid stone throne, amongst this swirling mass of water and fishes. So he's surrounded by emotions, but he's not consumed by them. He's not overwhelmed by them. So I would read this as telling me in the future, it's important to pay attention to my emotions, but to not get swept up by them. So to make a rational decision that's tinged by what I want and what I feel, but isn't controlled by it. So this is a very simple reading of past, present, and future, and I hope that it's made sense to you and given you a little bit insight about how this spread works. Now the next tarot spread that we're going to talk about is another 3-card spread that's all horizontal, but this one is a little bit better geared for relationships. So this one is really good for love-based questions because the leftmost card is you, how you feel about the situation. The middle card is the relationship itself, how you're interacting with each other and with whatever your question is. And the rightmost card is your partner, how your partner feels about the situation. Now this is a little bit more specific than the previous spread with the past, present, and future because this card is really good for people who are in relationships or are considering being in relationships with a specific person. It's not really good for people who are currently questing and saying, you know, what can I do to find a good relationship, because we have that partner and that relationship card in there, and those are really good for when someone has a specific person in mind. So for this question, my current partner and I are discussing the topic of marriage. It wouldn't be for another 1.5 to 2 years, but it's something that we've been talking about. And again, that is a huge life decision. I seem to have a lot of those recently. So that's something that I really need to get some insight on. So we're going to ask the cards on if there's anything that I need to know before I dive into the subject of marriage. So for this spread, we're again going to lay out 3 cards. We have me, the relationship, and my partner. Now on the left with the 10 of Cups, this represents me, and this can be what I want in the relationship or what I think I have in the relationship. And with the 10 of Cups, I like to call this the happy family card because this card really represents fulfillment when it comes to emotional and relationships. You've got a husband or wife, you've got kids, you've got this beautiful house in the background with this flowing stream, you have this rainbow overhead, and it really just represents fulfillment of all of your needs and desires. And this is something that I feel like I'm headed towards with this relationship because I am very secure in the relationship, and I think that this is really a good representation of how I feel like this relationship could end up. So this is a pretty solid card for me. In the middle, we have the relationship itself. And this is the 4 of Cups, so another cup card.
The Four of Cups is about waiting, and most importantly, it's about meditating. The universe is offering you something, and it's handing it to you right now, but you're not sure if you're ready to take it, so you need to think on it a little bit, and you need to figure out if it's the right thing and if it's the right time for you to take it. So with this, for my relationship, I would say my partner and I both are pretty sure that we want to get married, but we're not sure if it's the best time. We're not really sure if we're willing to take what the universe is offering to us as an option right now. So we're going to wait a little bit and think on it and talk about it, and then we're going to make that leap whenever it seems like it's the best time for us. So this is saying, just because something is offered doesn't mean you have to take it right away. You can wait a little bit, you can think about it. And I really like this card. The last card is the Queen of Swords. Now this is interesting because it's it's a sword in an emotional reading, in a relationship reading. I like the Queen of Swords for a couple reasons. I like that she has her sword upright and she's brandishing it. She's not afraid to show off and use her intellect. But she also has that crown of butterflies, showing that she has a softer side and that she listens to her emotions as well. She's also facing to the right, which means that she's looking towards the future, and she has a hand up as if saying, you know, come to me, I'm ready. And for my partner, I would say that this means he listens to his head a little bit more than he listens to his heart, but he still is touched by emotional things. He's not afraid to listen to his emotional side. He's just a little bit more intellectual in nature. And he's looking towards the future. He's ready for that next step. He knows what he wants, and he's ready for it to come to him. So overall for this reading, I would say that it's very positive. Both of us are looking towards the future. Both of us are pretty secure in who we are and what we have. And we're almost ready for that next step, but we're not quite there yet. So this reading has kind of cemented what I already thought of. We're almost ready to start planning a wedding, but, you know, maybe give it another 3 to 6 months and see if we're really comfortable then, because there's no harm in waiting. Just because the universe is offering you something doesn't mean that you have to take it right now.
So our last reading today is, of course, another 3-card spread. This one is a little bit different because instead of having the 3 cards spread out horizontally, we're going to have 2 side by side as a base, and then 1 on top as the top of the pyramid. Now, what these cards represent is strengths, weaknesses, and at the top is advice. So this is a good spread for if you're struggling with a problem and you're not sure what the best way to approach it is. I tend to think of this as a career-oriented spread, but it really can be a spread for any kind of issue that you're having. Maybe that's just because most of my stress comes from my job, so that's what it makes me think of. But you can apply this to relationships, you can apply this to really any life situation that you're having. So it's really good if you're trying to figure out what your best side is that you can bring to the table, what your weaker side is that you need to work on, and what the advice of dealing with whatever it is that you're struggling with is. So I'm personally going to do a spread on career. So say I'm having an issue with my job, which, you know, I'm always having problems I have to work through, issues I need to solve. So say I want to do a spread on what's the best way that I can deal with this problem that I'm having with work. And this spread, what it's going to do is it's going to tell me what my strong suits are, what my strengths are, so things that I can focus on and try to get better at, really bring those strengths to the table. And it's going to tell me what my weaknesses are, so something else that I maybe need to work on, something that I can get help with, not necessarily avoid, but find other things to really strengthen me and build me up, whether that's outside help or, you know, internal learnings. And lastly, it's going to give me advice on how to deal with this issue that I'm having and how to make my strengths and weaknesses come together and work together to create the best outcome and be the best that I can be in this situation. So let's see what the cards have to tell us. For this last reading, we're going to place 2 cards
next to each other and then one card on top. So we have strengths, we have weaknesses, and then we have advice. So for strengths, we have the Ace of Pentacles, and the Ace of Pentacles is all about new beginnings and new endeavors. So this could say that I'm good at coming up with new ideas, I'm good at starting things, I'm a very strong starter. And whenever the universe offers me something with that hand and the pentacle, I'm not afraid to take it. So I jump at new opportunities, I jump at new projects, something like that. So that's my strength. But when it comes to weaknesses, maybe that tendency to jump at new things gets me a little bit overwhelmed because I take on too much and I end up juggling too many different priorities. So my strength of being able to recognize new opportunities and being ready to jump on them when they're offered turns into a weakness when I can't prioritize and I can't figure out which is the most important, ball to keep moving and which one is okay to drop or put down for a little bit. So that can lead me to feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Now, the advice card is the Five of Swords, and this is a very interesting card because you can see there's been a battle, there's been conflict, and two men are walking away in the distance with their backs turned, while one man is gathering swords. So it's like he's getting ready for the next battle while the other two are still recovering. So this could be telling me to think a move ahead, think 2, 3, 4 moves ahead, get prepared for the next step while other people are still trying to figure out what happened in the last one. And by doing that, by being proactive, by thinking ahead, maybe that can help me juggle those different priorities, and that can keep me from taking on too much to begin with. So this is a really strong spread. I really like this spread because I think that it approaches the same topic from a couple different angles, and then it culminates in that advice card pulling everything else together. So hopefully this was helpful for you too. So I hope this video and these tarot spreads have been useful for you. I find them really helpful. I sometimes do Celtic cross readings whenever I'm really looking to take a deep dive into a situation. But a lot of times I'll just do a 3-card spread because they're faster, they're simpler, and sometimes it's easier to get to the heart of a matter with fewer cards because there's not so much to muddle it. So if you're looking for a quick answer, you're looking for something that's going to give you perspective on a situation, but isn't going to take 10 cards to get there. 3-card spreads are really good for that. So I hope that this was useful. If you have any questions or comments, please put them down below. I would love to hear your feedback, and I would love to know if there's any other topics that you would like me to cover or that you'd like to learn about. So until that next video, good luck with your tarot reading and enjoy.